The city lights blurred against the tinted glass of Ethan Cole's black sedan as he leaned back, exhausted from another 12-hour day of boardroom battles. Ethan was a man who seemed to have it all: wealth, power, and the kind of influence that made people lean forward when he spoke. Yet, the silence that greeted him every night in his penthouse gnawed at him like an unspoken truth. His life was a skyscraper of success built on foundations of loneliness. That evening, rain-slicked streets reflected neon lights as his driver slowed near a deserted bus stop. Ethan, lost in thought, barely noticed until a small movement caught his eye. There, huddled against the cold night, sat a young woman clutching a thinly wrapped baby. Her uniform, creased, damp, and unmistakably medical, spoke of a nurse just off a shift. Her shoulders trembled as much from fatigue as from the biting wind. Something in her eyes, resilient yet shattered, pulled at Ethan with a force stronger than logic. For the first time in years, instinct pushed him to act before reason could talk him out of it. He lowered the window, his voice steady but softened with rare humanity. "You shouldn't be out here with a child in this weather," he said. The woman startled, then clutched her baby tighter. I have nowhere else to go," she whispered. At that moment, Ethan realized he wasn't just looking at a stranger on the street, he was looking at someone life had cornered, someone balancing on the edge of despair. The words slipped out almost without thought, words that would change everything. "Come with me." The woman hesitated, her wide eyes reflecting both fear and hope in the passing headlights. She adjusted the blanket around the baby, as if shielding him not just from the cold, but from the uncertainty of strangers. Ethan noticed how her fingers trembled, not only from the chill but from the weight of desperation. "I don't even know your name," she said, her voice wavering. "Sophia," he replied gently, "my name is Ethan." "And you?" A pause. "Maria," she answered, her voice soft as though speaking it out loud made her vulnerable. Ethan nodded. "Maria, I promise no harm will come to you or your child. Let me help." Something in his tone, firm yet kind, eased the storm in her eyes, and slowly, almost reluctantly, she stepped forward. His driver opened the door, and Maria slipped inside, holding her baby close. The warmth of the car washed over her like a forgotten memory. Tears welled, uninvited, spilling silently down her cheeks as the baby stirred against her chest. Ethan studied her, noticing the exhaustion etched into her features, the weariness that went beyond one long day. She looked like someone who had been fighting battles no one else could see. "How old is he?" Ethan asked, gesturing softly toward the child. Maria brushed the baby's forehead with her lips before answering, 7 months. Her words carried both pride and sorrow. Ethan didn't press further, but his chest tightened with questions he couldn't voice. For the first time in years, the CEO known for ruthless decisiveness felt unsure of what came next. Yet, one thing was clear, he couldn't let her return to the cold night. The ride to Ethan's penthouse was silent, save for the hum of tires on wet asphalt and the soft breaths of Maria's baby. When they arrived, Maria's eyes widened at the towering building piercing the night sky. She clutched her child tighter, hesitating as though afraid to step into a world that didn't belong to her. Ethan noticed. "It's just a place with walls," he said gently, "but you and your baby need warmth more than pride right now." Something in his voice carried no judgment, only compassion, and slowly she followed him inside. The elevator ride felt endless, her reflection in the polished steel revealing a woman torn between fear and fragile hope. When the doors opened, Maria gasped at the vast expanse of glass and light. The penthouse overlooked the city like a palace in the clouds, but she stood near the entrance, unwilling to soil the marble with her damp shoes. Ethan motioned toward the couch. "Please, sit. I'll get something warm for you." She obeyed hesitantly, settling the baby down with trembling care. Ethan disappeared briefly and returned with a soft blanket and a steaming cup of tea. When she wrapped the blanket around herself, her shivers began to ease, but the weight of her silence remained. "Maria," Ethan said quietly, lowering himself into the chair opposite her, I don't need to know everything, but I want to understand why you were out there tonight. Maybe I can help more than you think." For the first time, her eyes lifted fully to meet his, and what he saw wasn't weakness, it was the raw strength of someone who had endured far too much alone. Maria drew in a shaky breath, her hands tightening protectively around her baby. "I was a nurse at St. Mary's," she began, her voice fragile yet steadying with each word. "I loved my work, but when my son was born, everything changed. His father left before even meeting him, and with no family to lean on, it was just me. I worked every shift I could, but rent, food, the bills, they swallowed everything. Last week, my landlord locked me out. Tonight was the first night I had nowhere left to go." Her words carried no self-pity, only a weary honesty that pressed heavy against the room's silence. Ethan felt something stir deep inside him, a pang that no business deal or luxury could ever quiet. For years he had measured life in profits and losses, yet here was a woman who measured survival in hours and ounces of formula. He looked at the baby, his tiny fingers curled into fists of pure innocence, unaware of the storm surrounding him. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You've been carrying all of this alone?" She nodded, tears finally spilling, though she quickly tried to hide them with the back of her hand. "I didn't want to bother anyone," she whispered. "I thought, maybe someone at the bus stop would help, but no one even looked at me." Ethan's jaw tightened, not at her, but at the world's indifference. He recognized that loneliness. Different shapes, same ache. In that moment, his decision wasn't born of charity but of recognition. He too had been invisible once, despite all his power now. He cleared his throat softly. "You're not invisible here, Maria. Not anymore." Maria blinked at his words, almost as if she didn't trust her own ears. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry, and she gently rocked him back to sleep, whispering promises that even she no longer believed she could keep. Ethan watched her, struck by the quiet strength in her fragility. For a man used to contracts and calculated risks, the sight felt like a mirror reflecting what truly mattered. He realized he wasn't rescuing her, she was showing him the very humanity he had locked away for years. Rising, he walked to the window, the city sprawling beneath them like a restless machine. His voice, when it came, was steady but low. "Maria, I don't want this to be just one night of shelter. You and your son deserve more than borrowed warmth." She turned toward him, uncertainty clouding her tired eyes. "Why would you care? You don't even know me." Ethan faced her, the corners of his mouth softening into the faintest smile. "Because once, a stranger reached out when I had nothing. They said the same words I said to you tonight, 'Come with me.' It saved my life. I can't ignore the chance to pass that on." Silence filled the room, thick with meaning. Maria pressed her lips together, torn between gratitude and fear of hope. Ethan continued, his voice firm but kind, "Stay here for now. Rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next. But tonight, you and your baby will sleep safely." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time, she didn't wipe them away. For the first time in months, Maria felt the fragile flicker of possibility. That night, Maria lay on the softest bed she had ever known, her baby curled peacefully beside her. For the first time in months, sleep came without fear chasing it away. Ethan, meanwhile, sat alone in his study, staring at the city but seeing something else entirely, a choice, a turning point. He realized that wealth without purpose was just another kind of poverty. By morning, the penthouse was filled with a warmth it had never known. Maria awoke to the smell of breakfast and the sound of laughter, her baby giggling as Ethan awkwardly tried to entertain him with a spoon and napkin puppet. The sight disarmed her, and she laughed too, the sound like sunlight breaking through gray clouds. Over the days that followed, a quiet rhythm emerged. Maria helped with small things around the penthouse, Ethan offered connections to restart her nursing career, and in between, they shared conversations that peeled away the loneliness on both sides. It wasn't romance, not yet, it was something more rare, trust rebuilding itself from broken pieces. One evening, as the baby drifted off in her arms, Maria looked at Ethan and whispered, "You've given us more than shelter, you've given us a chance." He shook his head gently. "No, Maria. You reminded me what it means to be human." In that moment, two lonely souls realized that kindness had stitched their lives together, not by accident but by grace. And as the city lights glowed outside, Maria no longer felt like a woman abandoned, and Ethan no longer felt like a man alone in his tower. Together, they had discovered the quiet power of compassion, proof that one simple invitation, "Come with me," could change everything.